Week 8 is underway, and it's the Bucs falling to the Ravens 27-22 here at home to fall to 3-5. Historical and notable in a number of different ways here as Tom Brady gets sacked for the 555th time. That's a record. You play long enough and you'll set good ones and bad ones. This is also the first time in Tom Brady's career as a starter that he finds his team 2 games under 500. He was 26 of 44 for 325 and a touchdown. A good amount of that coming here in garbage time as Brady efforted from 2 scores down for what was the majority of the fourth quarter. On the other side, Lamar Jackson, sound 27 of 38 for 238 and 2 touchdowns. Rushed it for another 43, and the rushing was the story in this one as the Ravens went for just 27 yards on the ground in the first half, 204 in the second, and it's a W in the win-loss column as the Ravens improved to 5-3. All right, instant reaction coming in with our NFL writer, Tyler Sullivan. Tyler, jarring numbers here coming out of this one, not just the record that we see next to the Bucs name, but 27 rushing yards in the first half here by the Ravens, 204 in the second half. They sort of looked like something clicked coming out of halftime there from an offensive standpoint. What'd you see from the Ravens that maybe made you feel better about this team than you did coming into the game?
Yeah, I think they went back to their roots in the second half. That's really what it was. You go into this game and you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary, they're down a number of starters, Antoine Winfield, Sean Murphy, Bunting. You go down the list. It's enticing to all of a sudden say, you know what, let's open it up with Lamar Jackson. Let's throw it around. We did have Rashad Bateman active for this game to start. We did have Mark Andrews active for this game to start. Both of those guys went down due to injury in the midst of this game. But when you have those guys at your disposal to begin, the game plan was to throw the football a little bit more. Those guys go down. You're not really moving the ball well effectively in that first half through the air. So what do you do in the second half? You run the football down the Buccaneers' throats. That's basically what the Ravens decided to do. That's their bread and butter. And as you saw, extremely effective. It opened up play action. It opened up things for Lamar Jackson, and that's how they win football games. That's what the DNA of the Baltimore Ravens is. And so when you look at what they were able to do with Gus Edwards even kind of going in and out of this game due to injury, they don't have J.K. Dobbins back in the fold yet. He's still on IR. The fact that they were able to do this with Kenyon Drake, obviously Duvernay was in there for a little bit. Justice Hill even had a nice couple of runs there in that second half. That's what's encouraging. This team, that's what wins you football games in the cold weather, in January, in December, running the football, playing good defense. That's what's encouraging about the Ravens here. But first and foremost, I'll just say this real quickly about the Ravens. They were finally able to close out a team. It got a little hairy there for a second. The Buccaneers in garbage time were kind of chucking it all over the field. They did score that touchdown. But finally, this team was able to close out a win after going up big at certain points in the second half. That's something that's notable with this Ravens team going into the next week.
Yeah, it's a Ravens defense that's not without its shortcomings. First 5, last 5 weren't sterling in their effort by any means, but it's enough to get the job done. I fear that much of our conversation here is going to be predicated around Tom Brady, the Buccaneers, and their struggles. And I think those struggles did borderline on dysfunction here on Thursday night. You had linebackers, captains of teams, pointing at coaches in the face coming off the field. You had Brady unable to get on the same page with a guy that it's been mind-mouth for the better part of 2.5 years now. Things just look really difficult, and they don't look fun, and we talk about it week after week. How much do you question the soundness of this locker room right now, Tyler?
100%. I mean, this, and I've said this before, and I've said it wherever they'll put a microphone in front of me, wherever they'll let me write it down. This Buccaneers team reminds me so much of the 2019 New England Patriots, the final year of Tom Brady. There was a little bit of the eye off the ball for Tom Brady, looking at free agency for the first time in his career back in 2019. We know now through investigations that he was talking to the Miami Dolphins, or at least there was some kind of rumblings and communications behind the scenes that they were kind of pursuing him. Eye off the ball a little bit, and you've seen it in his play with the Patriots towards the tail end. It seemed a little uninspired, seemed like he was already looking at other things. I kind of get that same feeling with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year in 2022. I don't know if Tom Brady's necessarily looking at his next team or anything like that, but the joy of playing the fire does seem to be out, not just with Tom Brady, but for the rest of this team. Like you were saying, pointing fingers all across the roster. It just feels like this team is lost. They don't know how to find themselves. Yeah, they were able to put up 20-plus points for what feels like the first time all season. They've done it 2 other times this year, going over 21 points. But it does feel like this team doesn't know who they are. Like we were saying about the Ravens earlier, they got back to their roots running the football. I don't know what the roots are for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yes, it should be passes to Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, but it just feels disjointed. The offensive line's an issue. They can't really run the football effectively, and Tom Brady seems frustrated. And more importantly, he seems like he's off the mark throwing the football. He was inaccurate in this game, overthrowing, underthrowing. I thought he should have had 3 interceptions in this game, ended up with 0. It was a very disjointed affair for the Buccaneers, and it's been that way all season. I'm afraid for what this may mean going forward for this team.
Just 3 touchdowns in the last 12 quarters of play for Tom Brady and this offense, and one of them comes in garbage time here late in this ball game. I know we have this conversation about Tom and the locker room and some of the leadership there, but at what point does Todd Bowles come into question here as the man who has to wrangle these different personalities in these different situations? It feels like that's maybe the place we haven't pointed the finger just yet. How much do you put out in front of the head coach right now?
You have to. The buck stops with the head coach. I mean, that's part of it, right? I mean, that is the job of the head coach. That's the responsibility of the head coach. You know, it's easy when you're the offensive or defensive coordinator. It kind of stops with you, but eventually it goes up to Bruce Arians. It goes up to the head coaches of yesteryear and when they were in there. And so if you're Todd Bowles now, you ascended into this role. You now have to take on that responsibility of righting the ship. He said last week the team felt lost. It seems like they're in a dire place. And nothing's changed in a matter of a couple of days. You thought that maybe you get home, you get some home cooking, you feel like you're able to kind of quickly get over that loss at home, that loss to the Carolina Panthers earlier. You get a Ravens team that is still a little banged up. They just haven't been able to do it. It just, for whatever reason, the message is not getting through to the roster there. Whether it's because it's a veteran group, maybe that's part of it too. They've kind of been there, done that. They've seen this, and they kind of know, hey, listen, we don't really have it this year. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's why it's going hollow at this point. But ultimately, yeah, you do have to place some blame on Todd Bowles there because it feels like the messaging, the communication, the streamline of this offense and the streamline of this defense, it just isn't hitting home. And again, that goes to the head coach to some degree.
And no doubt about it. They got plenty to figure out here as we cross the Week 8 mark. Next up, it's the Los Angeles Rams in a meeting of the last 2 NFC champions, both playing shy of expectation this year, but we'll see what comes out of that one. Let's finish here on a positive note here with the Ravens and specifically the way you project them in that division. The last 24 hours were notable, not just the win here, but the Chase news coming down with their biggest competition there in Cincinnati. How did the last 24 hours change the way you view the Ravens in this division?
It's monumental. I think that they should be the favorites to win the AFC North, and they should be a sleeper team in the AFC. I know that obviously the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to garner most of the attention, and rightfully so. Those 2 teams are elite. But let's see what goes on with the Ravens over the next kind of few weeks here. They were referencing on the broadcast, but it's worth bringing up here as well. The fact that they have such an easy schedule from here on out. Obviously, they played the Buccaneers tonight. They play on a Thursday. They're getting a long extended rest, facing the New Orleans Saints on Monday in Week 9. Then they have their bye week in Week 10. So you're talking about playing a game, one game basically, in the matter of 20 some odd days. And then beyond that, after the bye, you're looking at your remaining opponents. Only one of them has an above 500 record at the moment. That is the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 18. You look at what's happened with Jamar Chase and how he impacts what the Cincinnati Bengals do offensively. Obviously, they are going to struggle to some degree. That is going to limit them. If you use this next stretch of time, whether it's, this little period before the Monday night game or going into the bye, to get the likes of Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman and the rest of your roster healthy, you have a stretch run here where you're facing easy opponents to pile up some wins, possibly win that division. Who knows? Maybe even rack up enough wins, and you're looking at a number 1 seed in the AFC, and then all of a sudden, the road to the Super Bowl is going through Baltimore. No easy place to play. The sky's the limit for this team. They can really control their destiny here down the stretch run. That's their ceiling, which is exciting to see.
Yeah, no doubt a bump here on Thursday night. And for Brady and the Bucs, Tom Brady loses 3 straight games for the first time since 2002. Tyler Sullivan, thank you for the insight. And don't forget, the conversation continues on the premier pod in the entire NFL. Our guys breaking it down on the Pick 6 podcast. Download, subscribe, and enjoy for can't-miss conversations each and every day. It's the Pick 6 podcast.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.